This week's episode of Bizzong is brought to you by Brats in Hell, the audiobook by Frank J. Edler, narrated by John Wayne Caminelli.
Worst of all, the internet. It knows no boundaries nor borders. There are no language barriers. It is a global evil. That evil is driven in the likes of sin we have not yet seen before. They make up lies and falsehoods about one another. They freely engage in slander and libel with no repercussions. They make up cute pictures of baby cats and funny-looking people and pack these lies and deceits into little tiny pictures they call memes. They create phony news reports and pass them off as responsible journalism. This is the new evil. There is no circle capable of handling these sins. The time has come for hell to evolve with the crimes of the earth. It's time to create the 10th circle, the circle of assholes.
That's Brats in Hell by Frank J. Edler, narrated by John Wayne Caminelli, and available now on audible.com.
The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the weird and wacky fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank. What's going on, Zongers? Hope you've had a wonderful week and you're strapped in, ready for another exciting episode of the Big Bizzong Show, because it's going to be big this week. I'm telling you, Zongers. This week, I am welcoming a new guest to the show, the one and only Mr. Carver Pike. Carver's got a new book out with our great friends from Godless.com. It's called Scalp. It's a cool, creepy, wriggly, buggy story that makes your skin crawl when you read about it. Perfect for Godless.com. Perfect for extremely gross horror. So I'm sitting down with Carver this week. We're going to dig into what Scalp is all about, why he chose lice as a vehicle to tell a horror story, and we're going to also learn more about Carver's work in general and what he's doing with writing and how he's interacting with Godless. It is a great conversation. Of course, Carver is also 1/4 of the new Written in Red podcast, so we talk about that as well. If you haven't listened to Written Red, you definitely need to check that one out as well. But you don't need me to tell you about it, Zongers. Let's just get into the Bizzong interview of Mr. Carver Pike. Give us the gong. It is my pleasure to welcome to Bizzong this week a new guest, a new friend of the show, and boy, has he got a lot of stuff going on, so we got a lot of ground to cover this week. Please welcome to Bizzong for the very first time, and hopefully not the last, the one and only Mr. Carver Pike. Carver, welcome to Bizzong.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited, man. I've been listening to your show for a while. I'm a fan.
I'm glad you're a fan. I always love having Zongers on. And of course, I love having seasoned professionals like yourself on, because you are not only a great writer, but a podcaster as well in your own right. We'll skip over that for now, though. I want to pick up on the writing stuff first. First and foremost, your latest book out now, available not only on Godless.com, because we love talking about Godless.com here on Bizzong, but it's also available on Amazon as well. That'll be part of our discussion. But your latest book is called Scalp. Tell us all about what is Scalp.
Scalp has been, I love Scalp, but it's been a little bit of an issue because even with extreme horror fans, it seems people don't like head lice. Who knew? But, so Scalp is all about parasitic head lice. So it's actually about a group of teenagers that go to a leadership conference in West Virginia, and about the town around that leadership conference. And, a hunter kind of stumbles upon this deer that's got these parasitic head lice in it. And when he gets close to the deer that he shot, they hop onto his scalp. And then from there, it just kind of spreads. Not quite zombie, but parasites that take over your body, that type of thing. So it was a blast to write, and but yeah, some people don't want to touch it. I put the picture up, and everybody seems to get skittish, a little worried about it.
Is that based off the cover of the book?
Yeah, and I think just head lice in general. I mean, when I wrote it, I thought, man, this is a brilliant idea. No one's done head lice. And then, and I thought, people might, the horror world, that might latch onto it, being that everyone hates head lice. But apparently people hate it so much that, they've all had horrible experiences with trying to get head lice out of their kids' hair, and teachers have had issues with students that have had head lice. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny. I put the picture up, and the cover is just a scalp with head lice, like little.
Yeah. I was gonna say that the cover itself is really not all that like squeamish looking. It's sort of like I guess lice eggs on a strands of hair type of look.
Yeah, exactly. But as soon as I put it up, I'll get 20 comments below just, oh my God, that picture, I just can't, like, I'm itching my head over here, my kids, I'm scratching, I've had such a traumatic experience, and it kind of cracks me up.
Well, that's cool that you hit into that, though. I think that's pretty important, and not only in extreme horror, but like any kind of horror, you're trying to like hit that beat of like just a little bit of squeamishness that, people will just say, we'll go to bugs, bugs in and of themselves, be it spiders, whether you want to call them bugs, I know arachnids or whatever, but any kind of bugs, any kind of squirmy, wormy things, people love to hate those things. And so that's a good trope to pick on. And I guess head lice, I can't personally remember any books I read or even short stories around head lice. So it's a good place to drift into to get those bugs and that squeamishness. Did you, I know you said a lot of people had experience. Did you draw upon any personal experience from that you went there?
Kind of, I guess. I love parasite stories. I just think they're awesome. And so I was trying to think, how can I do this, differently? And I started thinking about when my daughter had really long hair when she was little. I mean, like down to her butt, basically. And she got head lice one time. And I just remember thinking it was never going to go away. Like, I really thought we were going to have to shave her head. No matter how much of the lotion we put in, the ointment, whatever that you put in, and no matter how much we combed through it, I just thought this is never going to end, man. She just has so much hair. And at some point it did, but damn, it was traumatic. So I can understand people's fear of it. And I actually had to shave my nephew's head because of it one time. His mom was just like, just help me, please. Oh, wow. Like, he had head lice and we just shaved his head. And so, yeah, I guess I did draw from some experience with it.
I dig that for sure. I know as a child growing up, I lived in it wasn't a dirty apartment, but it was an old apartment building. So it was prone to having roaches. And I did the same thing. I just sort of dug deep from my childhood and remembered like having to deal with those unwelcome guests in your home and I wrote a short story about it, but,
you turn the kitchen light on and they just go crazy.
And they go flying. Yeah. I did that and I kind of coupled it with a story from the rock band Kiss about how they dealt with roaches in the early days. And I made a story all about that, and people were like, oh my God, just made me scream and squirm. And I dug the reaction I got from that. I didn't realize just how much of a reaction just talking about bugs would get people that, even not even read the story, but just like think about the story. So it's a really awesome place, I think, for telling horror stories. Have you done it before?
Have I done?
As far as just utilizing bugs in your stories?
I'm trying to think of, when you were saying that, I was trying to think if I had. No, not really. In the Grindhouse, there's a scene with cockroaches, kind of, that came from a nightmare that I had. But no, not really. In fact, I want to. I was just saying the other day, I was telling somebody about how when I was a kid, I watched Kingdom of the Spiders. Uh-huh. The old one. I think it was black and white. I just remember I was a kid watching that movie. And there's a scene, I think, towards the end where like the whole town is just covered in webs and eggs. And I remember laying in bed that night, and we had popcorn ceiling. Uh-huh. And I was for like a week straight, I just couldn't sleep because I kept thinking the ceiling was covered in those spider eggs, and they were just going to like hatch and come down on me. So No, I definitely do. I've thought about writing some spider stuff, but I haven't yet.
So in general terms, outside of Scalp, how would you sort of maybe brand your work? Like, how are you attacking, the extreme horror?
It's funny because I didn't even know that I was writing extreme horror. I didn't even know extreme horror existed, to be honest. I just listened to your interview with Simon McCarty, and I think we actually have a lot in common because I too, I started with dark fantasy, and then a friend kind of convinced me to give erotica a try,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did write erotica. I actually have 3 pen names. So and I started out writing erotica. And then I thought, because I started to build that fan base and I had a bit of a following, I thought, okay, well, now's the time to throw my horror in there. They'll dig it. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, I found that, horror fans don't really like erotica and romance and stuff, and kind of vice versa. The romance fans don't necessarily dig horror stuff. So I made the mistake of putting my horror books out as kind of like erotic horror.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically extreme horror because it was extreme horror with extreme violence and gore and all that, but it had also graphic sex in it. And so I was thinking, okay, well, erotic horror, that makes sense. I'll be responsible. I won't just call it horror because I don't want kids to find it.
Right.
I read a lot of horror as a kid. So I thought branding it erotic horror was a good idea, and it wasn't at all. So, and I write I don't really write erotica anymore, but I did under the name Chris Genovese. Now I mostly write kind of romantic suspense, kind of like Sons of Anarchy type stuff, like Motorcycle Club, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't have much romance in it. It's mostly just violence. And I write that under CM Genovese. And so I created the name Carver Pike, because it is a pen name. I created the name Carver Pike to focus on my horror, because that's really where my heart's at. And so your question was, like, how would I brand my kind of extreme horror? And that's a tough question, because some of my books I don't even know are that extreme. Like Grad Night has some extreme scenes in it, but I don't know that it would be extreme horror. And Scalp is borderline. Slaughterbox, which is my book that's nominated for the 2021 Splatterpunk Awards, that one's pretty extreme.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you've been publishing, we'll say, horror of various types since 2015. Were you writing other things before that?
Well, A Foreign Evil, which is my first Diablo Snuff series, which is probably my most popular set of books, is my Diablo Snuff ones. I first published A Foreign Evil under my erotica name. That was the one I made a mistake with. So, and I actually had a hard time with it because, as Simon kind of mentioned, you kind of get your stuff thrown into almost like the erotica slush bin in Amazon, where no one really finds your work because it's just labeled erotica and it's just kind of thrown onto the side.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know if it's still the case, but back in the day, you couldn't even find it unless you went into Amazon and changed your adult filter to say you're allowing like adult content.
Right.
So if you didn't know to do that, which 99% of people don't, I mean, who knows to go into your Amazon account and change that filter?
Right. Yeah.
So if you were to go look up my books, you wouldn't even find them back then. So, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And, I have to completely apologize to you because I did overlook the fact that Slaughterbox is nominated this year for the Splatterpunk Awards in the category of Best Novel. So congratulations to you for that. Is this the first time you've been a nominee for the Splatterpunk or any type of award?
Yeah, definitely, man. And I'm really excited about it. So it is the first time, yeah.
And did that take you by surprise?
It did. It really did because, I thought, I did. I'm not going to lie. I went on Facebook like everybody else did and said, hey, the Splatterpunk Awards are coming up. If you dig my work and you liked Scalp and Slaughterbox were the only two that were that met the criteria. And I said, if you dig my work and you like these books, then hey, send an email over to here and vote for me. I mean, if you don't, no one would know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like, so,
right.
So I did reach out to my fans, followers, readers, and stuff, and said, hey, this is coming up. you like my work, vote for it, please. But I was totally caught off guard because I thought, it's hard enough to get people just to click on a link and vote, like when you have any kind of award type thing coming up or like a survey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, this required you to actually send an email saying that you like the work and, please put this into the nomination category, stuff like that. So I thought, there's no chance. So when I got the message that it had been, that it was one of the nominations, I was shocked.
I mean, that's great that you're there. And you know what else I love about it? Aaron Beauregard, who I also interviewed recently about the Slob and his nomination, is you're both self-published, and I think you're both the only self-published books in your categories. Well, not novella. There's two for novella, but as far as novel goes, you're the only self-published guy, which is near and dear to my heart, since I'm a self-published writer. Is all of your stuff self-published?
Yeah, it is. At one point, I was with a small publishing house, but that was a long time ago, and since then, I've just kind of gone at it alone. So it is all self-published.
That's a really, really great feat. Now, prior to getting the nomination, how was Slaughterbox doing for you? Was it kind of selling as well as previous stuff? Had it gotten some more attention than you noticed prior to the nomination?
No, not really. And, it's funny because it is part of my Diablo Snuff series, but it's very much a standalone book, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the cover, it says, I think it says a Diablo Snuff side story or something or a Diablo Snuff story. So it's not part of the, part 1, part 2, part 3. It is it has one of the characters from the rest of the series, but it is a standalone novel. But I think that because of that, people feel like they need to have read part 1, 2, they need to read them in order.
Right.
So Slaughterbox being the newest one, it hasn't gotten nearly as much attention. And it's actually probably The Grindhouse, which is the second book of my Diablo Snuff series, and Slaughterbox are probably my two personal favorites of my works. Mm-hmm. So it's sad that it didn't get enough, that much attention, but it's starting to pick up some attention now with the Splatterpunk nomination.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's changed since you made the nomination list. Has that been
definitely.
Has it? Well, I mean, let's quickly, before we dig a little deeper, just briefly tell everybody what Slaughterbox is about if they're not already aware.
All right, cool. So Slaughterbox is about a character named Kong, like King Kong. This is kind of a nickname. He showed up in book 2, The Grindhouse, but he wasn't a very important character. He kind of showed up near the end, and I wanted to dive in a little bit into his past and stuff. So it has a lot to do with his childhood and growing up and all the different incarnations of evil that he's run into. But the main part of the book is that he comes home from the military with a little bit of PTSD and decides to go take his kind of childhood sweetheart on a date to the new movie theater downtown. And prior to this, he'd gone looking for Diablo Snuff, which my Diablo Snuff series, it's not really snuff. I don't even know where I came up with the name. It just kind of hit me one day. But Diablo Snuff is kind of an evil organization that plays a part in this series that is just trying to destroy the world, basically. And so after the events in one of the other books, he kind of goes looking for this organization and shouldn't have. Doesn't find them, but he gives up. Goes home, takes this girl on a date to the movies. Well, it turns out that it was Diablo Snuff that bought this theater on purpose and renovated it and turned it into basically a big slaughter box, a big torture chamber. So Kong goes there, not knowing it, taking this date to this theater, and it's just fucking vicious, man. It's just things are coming out of the screen. It's just it's pretty sick.
It gets dark from there, as they say, right?
Yeah.
That's where the extreme comes in.
I actually got the idea one day when I took my kids to the movies, and I was thinking, we were seeing, I can't remember what movie it was, but it was a horror movie, and I was thinking, like, man, what if this shit came out of the screen? Or, what if, like, I don't know. I just started thinking, like, if fucking knives started flying out of the screen at the audience and shit like that, so.
Yeah, you got the mind of a writer there, for sure. It's interesting you take the series approach to some of your work, Diablo Snuff being a recurring series for you. Is that something that comes out of your writing erotica? I know a lot of erotica is like very like series based.
Yeah, probably. And the funny thing is, The Foreign Evil, the first book, is just a novella. and it wasn't meant to be a series at all. In fact, it kind of has a bit of a cliffhanger, left to leave you thinking a little bit. I really never meant to write a sequel. And then I had a nightmare one night that was one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had in my life. And I woke up and just started like feverishly writing it down in a notebook. And that became The Grindhouse, which is the one I was telling you is like my favorite of my books. That's the second book in the Diablo Snuff series. And then at that point, I felt like I needed to write a third, which is the one I'm working on now. But it has 2 side stories to it. And so, yeah, I think it did kind of, at the same time, I was writing erotica. And also that other pen name I was telling you about, CM Genovese, like the biker books.
Yeah.
That's a series too. I mean, and in that world, you kind of, there's almost no such thing. I think one of the things I love about horror though is the fact that you don't have to write a series.
Yeah.
Or other genres you kind of do. Like you can't really write a one-off fantasy book.
No.
I mean, you don't see many of them, right?
No, not at all.
You can't write definitely not in romance and stuff like that. So it's kind of horror. It's the one world where you can still get away with writing one book instead of, constantly doing series. So I did kind of back myself into a corner with Diablo Snuff because I do need to finish that series. But the way I approached it was that each book was pretty much a standalone. So that's kind of refreshing too, is they don't really rely on the other.
Okay.
The one I'm working on now called The Maddening, that one does need to be read last because all the standalones kind of, meet in that book. But other than that, they can all be read in any order, really.
Yeah, I noticed that, as they're listed on Amazon and such, you don't have them necessarily grouped together or categorized as a series of, book 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is, I guess it's easier for anybody to pick up anywhere along the line and then realize after the fact that, there's other stories to this world. Is it more a world than a sort of through line of narrative?
Yeah, kind of. And in fact, actually, most of my books, like I have a Scarecrow book called Shadow Puppets, Scarecrows of Minnow Ranch. And in that one, it mentions Diablo Snuff somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Red Grave, which is kind of a military horror, my serial killer kind of book. That one at some point mentions Diablo Snuff. And so does Grad Night, actually, which is one about, Grad Night's about a bunch of teenagers getting revenge on their teachers, basically. So, and that one also. In fact, the only one I think that doesn't in some way touch on Diablo Snuff, at least mention it, is Scalp. So
it's
all the other ones, at least somewhere, mention it at some point. So
is there in the back of your mind sort of a quote unquote mythos or Carver Pike universe that you're creating either intentionally or subconsciously?
Yeah, I think so, because actually in the Grindhouse, I mentioned the Scarecrows from the Scarecrow book, and I kind of like touch on some of the other ones like that. And the Maddening, I'm trying to figure out. I'm working on that one now. I'm about 50,000 words into it, so I'm working on that one now, and that one will touch on some of the other books and stuff too. So I'm kind of kicking my own ass for not mentioning it in Scalp. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of a mistake. So looking back, I'm like, I forgot to do that. So at this point it's too late, but yeah, in every other book I do mention Diablo Snuff somewhere other than my dark fantasy series.
Have you found, your readers sort of looking for that stuff too, or picking up on the recurring themes?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually just saw a post on Facebook the other day about it. Somebody, I can't remember what the post was, but somebody said like, you have to read Shadow Puppets, which is the Scarecrow book, because it's mentioned in there too. And then someone else said they hope they see my Scarecrows in The Maddening, the newer book that I'm working on and stuff. So they are kind of noticing that they are noticing it. Yeah. Picking up on it.
That's cool for sure. Now I like to dig a little bit too into the more like business side of writing thing, and especially when it comes to series, because myself, I'm not big into reading series. I kind of, I don't read a whole lot of fantasy or sci-fi because I'm really not, I don't want to dedicate myself to reading 50 books, or if I do, jump into a book and I read it and I'm like, well, by the time I come back to book 2 or 3, well, I'm going to forget all this. So to me, it's laborsome to do. And so when I write, I don't write in series like intentionally. Like I don't even want to spend that much time on my own, sort of series. I want to keep telling new stories. So I don't get into it a lot. And I've seen a lot of my closer writer friends, they've dabbled in series or have written a bunch of them. And it's an interesting, like, as far as business or, selling books, it's an interesting model that, it seems the type of thing that you have to almost write like the first 3 to 5. And it seems like somewhere in book 3 to 5 is where you'll find that people sort of by and large start picking up on the series and will, pull their way through the series. And there's no doubt there's dedicated series readers out there. So it's a cool way to just kind of grab a reader and hook them, as opposed to just having, like myself, a bunch of standalones that there's nothing to keep going with me necessarily, at least not follow a particular storyline. So have you found that works to your advantage, having a series out?
Some ways, and definitely more recently, I would say, like see, this is what I was telling you before, is starting out with erotica and stuff, I don't want to say neglected my horror, but I definitely didn't. It's a lot to juggle, man, having 3 pen names, and I think I've published probably about 30 books altogether, like with novellas, short stories, books of poetry, just everything. I mean, I probably have about 30 books that I've done. So it's been a lot to juggle and stuff like that. And now I'm noticing that I've seriously switched my focus to horror, and that's where it's going to remain, really. I will still do some of the books on my other pen name that I'll juggle back and forth, but I do plan to focus primarily on my horror works. And I have noticed that since I've started doing that, and I've spent a lot of time talking to the readers and stuff like that. I mean, I'm really active on social media. I have a group, and I'm on my wall all the time, and I try to do Instagram and Twitter and Slasher and, everything. I have found that since I've started to focus more on that, people are starting to pick up on it, and they are starting to get into that series. And, like we just mentioned, like they're starting to notice the little cookie crumbs and stuff like that in all the other books, and they're picking up on it. So
tracing the lines.
I definitely think so. And the only thing I'm kind of kicking my own ass for is that, and this has a lot, since we're talking business side of things, and Amazon kind of screws us a little bit with this too, is that, that if you have a book so for example, I have a Foreign Evil, which is book 1 in this Diablo Snuff series. Then I have the Grindhouse, which is book 2. Well, then I have a side story called Passion and Pain. That was written by Chris Genovese, which is my erotica pen name, and Carver Pike. Right. So so basically the first half of the book is like an erotic romance, and then I take that same couple and just fuck them up basically with Carver Pike. So so I wanted that to really be kind of like a book 1.5. Yeah. Like 1.5. It's not quite strong enough to be a full Diablo Snuff book, but it does touch on the Diablo Snuff world. But Amazon won't let you just put 1.5 in your series order. So you can put it in the title or subtitle. You could say, Diablo Snuff 1.5 and write it out, but it's still not going to come up. You know how Amazon bunches your books together and shows it as a series?
Yeah, you can specifically set them up as a series.
Yeah, and I've heard they were changing that, and as far as I know, they haven't yet. They were letting people do it and trying it out or something weird like that. But then even Slaughterbox, that would have been perfect as a 2.5, but not quite. It was Kong's own story, so I didn't feel like it really deserved to be a Diablo Snuff full-on book 1, 2, or 3. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. So, you have those
so it's kind of fucked me up a little bit, because now you see book 1 and 2 together as a series, but these other 2 books, which are kind of part of the series, they're not with the series. So they're not listed on Amazon as being part of that series, because I can't put a 1.5 and a 2.5.
I noticed. I just recently, for the first time, read a Terry Pratchett book for The Color of Magic, which is an ongoing series called Discworld. But then when I noticed, reading this book, like you said, there's all these offshoots of Discworld books, and there's Rinceworld, and there's this thing, and I've noticed this is the Death Book, which is Discworld 3, but it's Rinceworld 2, and it's Mighty, Goblin Book 9. It's one book, but it figures into 3 different series. I think he was trying to do that. It was this is technically 1.37, but it's also, and I think it's a complicated way of doing what you're just describing you wish you could do.
Well, that, because like that book, Passion and Pain that I mentioned, I didn't feel like, I didn't want to make it to where you had to read that as like a book 3, you know what I mean? Because it is written by Chris Genevieve's Carver Pike. Some people will say, fuck that. I don't really want to read anything that's romance or erotica type of thing, even though it's just the first half of the book. So I didn't really want to make it like a part 3 to where people felt like they had to read that in order to keep going, kind of like an offshoot, like you said. And yeah, it's just been a mess. So I've thought about going back in and just going ahead and doing that, calling it, book 3 is Slaughterbox book 4, and then the Maddening book 5, which is really book 3. I'm confusing even myself.
I'm sure you'll figure it out somehow.
Don't even listen to me.
Well, that's, I guess really it all circles back to the point of like, the nice thing is horror is one of the few places that it doesn't need to be a series. So, and I guess it's almost like kind of cool or fun or awesome when you see your readers actually picking up on these crossovers and connections and stuff and sort of piecing it together on their own, not necessarily being directed right toward it.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. And other than like Redgrave, which is also a novella, and it's that's the one I said was kind of like my serial killer book.
Uh-huh.
It's based actually off of, I was in the military. I was military police, security forces in the Air Force. And one night I had to kind of like babysit this guy who'd been caught off base. He was caught like at a rave or something. And he was brought onto the base. And this was up in Alaska. And even though we were cops, we didn't really have a jail cell, because in the military, things are a little different. Like if you get caught underage drinking or whatever, usually they'll just turn you over to your boss, your chief master sergeant, whatever. So we didn't really have a jail cell. It was being used as storage, actually. So they took this old building. It was like a 2 or 3 story old building in the middle of like the base. And you got to imagine a base in Alaska. It's like a lot of wilderness and shit. There's like a campsite. There's a ski hill, everything there. So this building was like kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it was being used as like a confinement cell, kind of. So they asked if anybody would volunteer to stay overnight and watch this guy. So I volunteered. And I didn't know anything about him. It was really creepy because there was this tiny little window like you see in the jail movies when you look in like a confinement cell.
Right.
It was this tiny little window, and every hour on the hour you had to go check on him, shine your flashlight in this little window, and just make sure that he was still in bed. Like during the day, they actually saw this guy because they had to feed him and shit like that. But at night, he just slept through the whole night. And I worked the night shift, and we weren't allowed to have a gun on us because they were worried he was going to try to like break out. So we couldn't be armed, and I think I only had a radio, like a handheld, walkie-talkie, and a big-ass, like, mag light flashlight. That's it. And so every hour on the hour, I had to shine my light in and check on this guy. And I couldn't really see him because he had the blanket pulled up over his head. And I had to check, like, the electrical outlets and make sure they weren't catching fire and stuff like that. There was, like, a list of things you had to check. And that was pretty much it. I watched him for like 3 nights. There were some creepy sounds, shit like that, really strange stuff in the building, but nothing really happened. So I took that experience and made it into a story about a female military member who gets stuck working this post. And the guy she's watching is actually like kind of like a serial killer, like a military guy that went crazy.
Uh-huh.
So this book is a novella. It's a short story, a novella. I might my plan is I would like to revisit the character of Redgrave, who is the kind of killer in that story, and do like a full-length novel with it. But other than that, I don't really have plans for a series with horror. Because like you were saying, I want to get in, write a really good book, and get out.
Right. Yeah. And I guess you haven't been finding so much great traction with the series that it's kind of forcing you to pursue that avenue neither.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Now, I want to also touch on your relationship now with Godless.com. We've been talking a whole lot about Godless.com on this podcast for many weeks now because I'm personally a huge fan. I totally buy into what Drew Stepik is trying to accomplish with Godless.com. And, of course, I'm excited about a lot of people that are in the orbit of Godless.com. That includes yourself. As we record this episode, your book, Scalp, is the featured book of the week there. And so it's very timely as well. How did you become involved with Drew and Godless to begin with?
Well, I'm doing the Written in Red podcast with Daniel Volpe and Aaron Beauregard and Roland Bursey Jr. well, Aaron and Daniel are also on Godless, so I was talking to them a little bit about it. And I had seen it on Facebook, but I guess I didn't really get it at first. I just saw the logo popping up, and I said, I actually listened to your interview of him. That's where I learned the most about it, and I reached out to him after that, probably like the day after I listened to your interview of him. So good job, man.
Yeah, I mean, when I first discovered, what Drew was up to in Godless, when I first heard about it, I was just sort of the same as you. I kind of heard some murmurs about it, and I didn't understand it, and he was on another YouTube broadcast, pitching the whole thing, and I still was like, so you're only publishing ebook? Like, I didn't really get it, like, and he's not a publisher, so I had him on to even sort of help clarify it even more for me, but there was something about it that seemed cool. Like, anytime you can stick it to quote unquote the man or Amazon, like, I'm kind of into that, and I know that's an uphill battle, and I usually scoff at anybody who thinks they're going to attempt to, circumvent Amazon. But there's just something about Drew and what he's setting up at Godless, and you want to believe in him and pull for it, and you see it, even if you can't understand totally what it is, like, you just kind of see like there's something cool going on. So, it's my hope to build, because I really believe in what he's doing, the concept there. I gave him a book myself as well, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is on it. Are you, as far as releasing on Godless, I know Scalp right now is still available on Amazon, so obviously a little more businessy. You're not involved with the KDP contract on this. Are you going to go exclusive with them? Like, how are you going to work with Godless?
As of right now, I don't have plans to go exclusive. We haven't even talked about it. Drew is such a cool guy, man. So energetic, and so, like, he really believes in what he's doing. And, the horror world, I've noticed, is kind of like a family, man. It's really cool how, like, unfortunately, I've never been able to go to, like, an actual live con or anything like that. Like, I wanted to go to Killer Con and stuff and meet a lot of these authors and stuff. But I feel like Godless is almost like a family. It's almost like a mom and pop store or something like that, but on the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for horror authors. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? It's kind of like it feels that way. Like, you see all names that you recognize when you go over there and stuff. It's like, oh man, they're on here too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy.
As of right now, I don't have any plans to go exclusive with them. I'm, listening to, I've mentioned Simon's interview that you did recently with him and stuff a few times, but he also, I didn't even realize how many issues there were with people having their work yanked down until listening to his interview.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it is kind of scary, man, with this monopoly out there that's just like, you hear the term putting your eggs in one basket, and it's so cliche and stuff, but you really are, when you just go with KU. And I've made money on KU. I think KU I think you do much better with KU on the romance side of things than with horror. I feel like horror fans and readers really surprise me with how many of them want the actual physical paperback, or the hardcover, like the physical copy of a book. Like, I was blown away by how many actual physical copies I was able to sell with horror that, I've had physical copies up with romance since forever, and I've probably sold 2. It's crazy. So, I mean, people just, in romance, they devour the book so fast, but they just want the ebook.
Right.
So with horror, I'm going to try first. I'm starting to go wide. Like, I just finally got Scalp and Grad Night. Grad Night just came off of KU the other day. So I've got Grad Night and Scalp on Godless, but I also have them on Barnes & Noble and iTunes and, Google Play and all that, Kobo and all that stuff. So
right.
I'm going to try going completely wide, but but Godless is a big part of it. So I really do like what Drew's doing, and he's so personable too. I mean, he reaches out to you, talk to him like a friend. He's a really good guy. So
yeah, and it's I like that you're if I'm not going to be in KDP, like, I'm going to put it up everywhere, like Barnes and Noble and all those different outlets that skip Kobo. Like,
and I'm not even using like draft to digital. I'm just going straight.
Oh, you're going straight on each platform.
It's really not that complicated. You know
right.
What I mean, I use I have a Mac, so I use Vellum, and with Vellum it creates the ebook or whatever for everything. So it does like Kobo, Apple, everything, which is a click of a button. So I mean, you just have to go to the site and it was a kind of a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie. Like setting it up the first time, like Apple's a pain in the ass, man. God.
So Kobo has its own file type, and Apple has its own file type. They're not just EPUB.
Well, most of them use EPUB, but that's with Vellum. It gives you one for each of them, and then there's like a generic EPUB too. I don't even know what that's for, but I just used the one that said Apple for Apple, the one that said Kobo, because I mean it does it for you automatically. So
right.
I definitely recommend using Vellum, especially for formatting and stuff. If you've got a Mac, it's worth I think it's like $250, but then it's like a one-time fee, and it just makes things so easy.
That's a hot tip right there. And when I first started publishing, because I owned a Nook, in the beginning, and I shunned the Kindle, and
You're one of those people I've never.
Yeah, I really just believe like when it was a hardware issue, when you actually had like physical e-readers and you weren't just reading on your phone or whatever. That I truly believed. I personally liked the Nook way better than the Kindle experience. So when I started publishing, I'm like, fuck that. I'm going wide, baby. Screw this, exclusivity shit, and that's sucky and all that stuff. And I probably was staunchly in that corner for like 2 years. And had 2 books out that just the sales were like dismal. If I sold 2 books a year, I was happy. And I finally just said, what am I doing? And everybody I'm talking to is like, KDP is where I make all my money, blah, blah, blah. So I finally bit the bullet. I signed one over to KDP, and immediately I was getting the page reads. Immediately the sales went up, and I was like, son of a bitch, this sucks. Like, it is the fact that like Amazon's got it by the balls. But, conversely, this is, going back probably 5 years or so, I also had to look at it and say, you know what? Barnes & Noble's not doing anything for the independent, publisher, like at all. There's no incentives on their part to lure you away from a KDP or anything. So I'm kind of like, fuck them, if they're not going to do nothing for me. And the second I sign into this KDP, like I'm getting the page reads and I'm making more money in a week than I had having the book up all year. It was a no-brainer for me at the time, but I don't know. It's hard for me to say that the pendulum's swinging now. I do get a definite sense that, readers out there, by and large, do recognize that, especially with pandemic, there's Amazon getting enough money and they do feel better about, like you said, buying paperback books, probably directly from the author if possible, get that signed book out. They're really into that stuff. And I see Godless as a way to, maybe I don't want the signed paperback, but I can buy this book digitally and know that, the creators are going to get way more money or a way bigger cut, than they would having it on Amazon. So they're still like, people want to like take that away from Amazon, a little bit of power.
The other sites are noticing that too, because if you notice, I think it's Barnes & Noble and Kobo, I think all of them pretty much now give you like 70%, regardless of the price of the book. Where, with Amazon, if it's under $2.99, they only give you like 30%.
Right.
If you have to price it over that. And then there's like a whole other thing where if you're over $10, they drop you back to 30. Amazon has all kinds of weird stuff going on, but
we won't even get into their ebook.
I tried this twice before to go wide, and I chicken shit it out, man. Like
I
saw I saw the paycheck just kind of shrink, and I got scared, and I went back to KU. Yeah. But I didn't understand. From what I've heard, it takes like a full year almost to actually start seeing the benefits of going wide. But there's even like on Facebook, there's a group called Wide for the Win for anybody that's like serious about going wide. And you're not even allowed to talk about KU in that group. They're so serious about only talking about benefits of going wide. I wouldn't say they're anti-Amazon because, part of going wide is Amazon as well. It's just not being rolled in KDP Select. So, but even Kobo now has kind of like a KU type of thing, but you don't have to be exclusive. So people can pay. Because, KU is kind of like the Netflix of book reading. I mean, you pay per month and get, books. Where Kobo has something similar, but you don't have to be exclusive as an author. So you can just opt in and say, like, yeah, I want to be part of your monthly, whatever it's, like KU.
Yeah.
Amazon, you have to say, like, in order to be in KU as an author, you have to say, I will only have my books on Amazon.
Right.
Kobo doesn't make you do that. So that's kind of cool.
It's cool, and I'd heard that, I definitely heard that Barnes and Noble was offering a better royalty rate and everything lately. But to me, it almost screams of like too little, too late. Like you're closing the barn doors after the horses have gotten out. Like, why weren't you doing this?
Blockbuster trying to
right. The reason that
those DVDs in the mail at the last second.
Yeah, exactly like that. It's like you've already lost your market share. You're doing this now because you realize far too late. So to me, it's still like you said, it's a lot of work. It's not that it can't be done, but it's going to be a lot of work to get there. And there's just, I'm a Nook guy, and I don't care about Nook no more. I read on my phone. I read on my tablet. It's Samsung. It's not Nook or Barnes and Noble anymore. And so it's almost the battle of the app, not necessarily the hardware. So it seems to me insignificant. And so,
or you just go to Godless and get it no matter what.
And you just go to Godless and screw them all. And
exactly.
Yeah, I do that too. I use my public library to borrow ebooks from time to time as well. Any port in a storm, I'm all takers. So I know it's an uphill climb, and I applaud you completely for doing that. And it speaks volumes. Not just I guess Godless is part of the equation to be able to be comfortable to go wide. Would that be fair?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Godless plays a big part of it too, because of the like I said, the putting all your eggs in one basket kind of thing. It is kind of terrifying, man, to think, like, for example, I'm writing The Maddening right now, and I have some of the most gruesome, gory scenes I've probably ever written in that book. And after listening to that interview with Simon and hearing about his books being taken down and stuff like that, it is very scary, man. And to think that, I'm just now trying to go wide, and like I said, it could take up to a year. That's what I've heard. About a year is what it takes to really start building a reader base on other platforms.
Right.
And maybe a year from now, I'll be so comfortable, or at least comfortable enough, that I don't care if Amazon really were to yank a book down. I doubt it, because they are still a big, huge part of the revenue stream. But it is kind of scary right now, thinking that if they were to yank my books down, nobody knows me anywhere else. I'm fucked.
Yeah, and that's how.
Whereas I feel like with Godless, because it is just horror, that wouldn't be the case necessarily. Because I could say, as Simon's doing with all, he has some exclusive books and stuff out over there, is saying, I can say, hey, just go look over, at Godless and stuff.
Right.
So.
Especially when a lot of Godless is that draw. Like, people, part of what they're doing branding wise is knowing that, if there's a book that's getting deplatformed from Amazon, from Smashwords and wherever, like, it will be, you can still trust that you can go to Godless and it will be there, no problem, not touched up and toned down. It will be the book that nobody else is willing to publish. It will be at Godless. That's part of their whole scheme, I guess, is really what it comes down to. And Simon McCarty is sort of the poster child for that. And it's paying off for them. And hopefully, it's still young, really young, all things considered. And it's going to be building. I think from a year from now, they're going to be in a strong position if they keep on this track that they're going on and inviting the writers, that they're inviting. I mean, to me, and you're included in this crop, it's like, yourself, you, and we'll touch on this in a second, the Writing in Red podcast. It's you, Aaron Beauregard, and Daniel Volpe, and you got the Simon McCarty out there. There's this like new group of extreme horror writers that, at least for me, like it's a new group. They're not your typical ones that we've kind of seen over the last 5 to 10 years. And it's almost like a fresh new voice that's invigorating the genre itself. So, don't blush.
And the funny thing is, they're like the nicest.
Yes.
Like, have you noticed
that
most of the extreme horror people, the ones that write the sickest shit that make you want to vomit in your mouth, they're the nicest people, like on social media and stuff. They're the ones that are actually like interacting and stuff with the readers and stuff like that.
Yes.
It's like you spew this shit out on virtual paper, and then you just be nice for the rest of the day. It's like
it's so true. People like, the modesty, like Simon McCarty, it was like pulling teeth to get him on the show. He's like, I don't know, he's a little shy and stuff. Or Rain Havoc recently was like, somebody's like, oh, you got to go on Bizzong. She's like, no way, I don't do that stuff, And meanwhile, she's sitting writing. Well, I don't want to be spoilery, but she wrote the Mukbang Princess, which was really, really extreme and gross. And it's like, really, you're going to be modest after writing that, it's fine. I no pressure to be on Bizzong ever. But it's sort of funny to see that reaction from somebody who wrote something like that. I enjoy those. And that's been my experience over the years with any extreme horror writer, guys like Ryan Harding and even Ed Lee, they're not the crazy people that appear in their books, like by any stretch of the imagination.
Wrath James White is like one of the coolest, most professional guys out there.
Yes, yeah.
He writes some sick shit, so.
Yeah, he does. And he doesn't have to do anything. He's just intimidating being Wrath James White.
Yeah, he is. But he's such a nice guy, too.
Oh,
it's just great.
Completely. Yeah. He's got the best smile, the most warmest, inviting smile, and yet you've never met him in person, but I have, and he's a very large, imposing figure, and he does. The last couple of years, I think it's at KillerCon, he does that one punch from Wrath routine, like just somebody volunteers to get one punch from Wrath James White in the shoulder. I'm like, that's going to take some balls. I want
to see that. Last year was the first year I was ever part of KillerCon. I was just in the vendor room and watched all the panels, but I wasn't like in a panel or anything like that. So I'm hoping to get a little more involved with this KillerCon. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I don't know yet if this one's I don't know if they've announced whether this one will be an actual event or
no, it's going to be virtual. I think they're selling virtual tickets right now. You may want to check into that sooner rather than later. I'm pretty sure it's officially virtual only.
Okay.
So, I want to move on and absolutely got to discuss the new podcast you're involved in called Writing in Red. It's yourself and three other extreme horror writers. Why don't you tell me about what Writing in Red has got as we record this? The first episode is out, and soon there will be others to follow by the time this is released upon the world.
Yeah, so Written in Red is the horror reader and writers podcast is what we're calling it, and it's myself, Carver Pike, with Aaron Beauregard, Daniel Volpe, and Roland Bursey Jr. And right now we're just rolling out like the intro episodes. What we're doing is the first half, one of us is introducing a book that inspired us in some way. And then the second half, we're three of us are interviewing the fourth person, kind of. So for the first four episodes, there'll be an interview with each of us, really. And then after that, the plan is that it's going to be half the episode will be somebody introducing a book, and oftentimes it will be like an indie horror novel or something like that. And then the second half will be more to do with writing and, just everything to do with the extreme horror and indie author world, basically. So we really want to get not just authors, but we also want to touch on, the readers and the bookstagrammers and stuff like that. I mean, we have such awesome readers in this world. I mean, if you go on Facebook, you can just see the people that are constantly promoting our work and other indie authors' work. And even not indie authors, even authors with small publishing houses and stuff like that. They're out there constantly promoting for us, pimping our work, really, without anybody asking them to. So it's kind of our way of giving back to this world. And it's, and we all get along really well, so we're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I definitely listened to the first episode and I enjoyed it. I like your format. I like your ideas, and I'm totally looking forward to, the future episodes. And I like that your guys are like doing this roundtable thing, and you're all like in this, like extreme horror niche, so you can really sort of talk shop and serve the community that way. That's, I think, something that is lacking right now, for the extreme horror, is there's not a solid sort of, writerly discussion podcast. It's not just going to be about writing. Like it's going to be about horror and everything else, but it's I think it's just something that the genre needs right now. And so I'm definitely looking forward to it. Whose idea was it to start the podcast?
I don't know who actually. I want to say it might have been Aaron and Daniel. I'm not sure who started it. I was the last one to come on. I can tell you that much. So I was actually. It was mentioned to me first. Daniel mentioned to me first. And at first I just said, "Hey, I'd love to be on it, like, as a guest, as an author at some point." And then I started talking to Aaron a little bit about it, and then that's when we decided that I would just be, part of the 4-man team. So I honestly don't know who initially started it. I don't know if all 3 of them got together or if it's just 2 of them, or I don't know. So, but
correct me if I'm wrong.
I was the last one to join.
It's Aaron that already has his own podcast, right?
Yeah, so more than likely it was probably Aaron might have pitched it, but I don't know if he and Daniel came up with it together or if he pitched it to Daniel or how that worked. But
and do you think after going through, you said you told me off air that you pre-recorded the 4 episodes. You think you're going to be able to handle the rigors of podcasting and balancing that with your writing?
Yeah, I think so, because it's kind of, for me anyways, it's kind of stuff that I was doing anyways, but in written form, because anyone who follows me on Facebook knows, and I have taken a pause from it for a while because I've just life has gotten in the way, but I had this thing on my Facebook wall called, what was it called? Daily Interview Question from You. And I was accepting questions from readers and, followers on Facebook and friends and stuff. And I mean, I've literally, for a while, I want to say almost this whole year, it might have been the whole year, I was answering in written form a question every single day posed to me from one of the readers or something. And it usually had something to do with the writing world or my thought process or what goes into, writing a horror novel, that kind of stuff, daily routines and things like that. So, so it's kind of like doing that, but in spoken form, so. I'm sure things will get in the way for all of us. We'll all have personal stuff going on and things like that, but I think we'll be able to handle it for the most part.
And I think you're fortunate. It may not have been, built into the idea of the podcast, but having a round table of 4 guys, it does allow for, when life gets in the way for one of you guys, that you can just drop out. The show doesn't suffer. You can plow through without a member for the week, and carry on, keep that going. I know for me, the one thing I've learned about podcasting is consistency, and that's key.
Yeah.
So, that's the one thing. You don't want to be that guy that jumps in there, does a podcast, and one this week, and maybe 1-2 for months from now, and then 6
and
months.
You're on your own, man.
Yeah, well, I am and I'm not, because I always
you must have a hard time.
I have well, that's the thing. I try to be every week, but I'm on my own, but I need a second person to talk to each week. So it is always 2 people. And sometimes, depending on the time of year and what's going on, it's not always easy to get guests. And I've done some solo episodes myself, just rambling, talking to myself. I was kind of make a joke of it. I'm just a guy sitting in his basement, staring at his basement wall, talking to himself. And sometimes I'll do that for myself for an hour, and then I really feel like a fucking lunatic.
Well, at one point I had a Facebook Live thing I did every week for an hour and a half, like on Thursdays and stuff. And so I know burnout is real. Yeah. Like, you get to the point where you're just like, I just don't know if I can do it this Thursday and stuff. But like you said, I've got 3 other guys that, to kind of roll with, and
so somebody carry the torch, keep the show going, and
because in the past I've always had to do it on my own and come up with ideas,
right,
and the show going and stuff, where it's just not that way anymore. It's actually weird to me because I've never been in a situation where I didn't personally have to plan everything I was doing. There's other people to brainstorm with and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's like you showing up, you're just talent. You don't have to do the work. You're probably not editing the show. You're just showing up and.
In fact, if you watch the first episode and probably the others coming up, Aaron does most of the talking. Like whenever there's like a silence or something, Aaron is really good at keeping it going. So he's, like you said, he has his own podcast too. So he's definitely a lot of experience. And Daniel's really good at picking up the silence and stuff. Basically, everybody is. Roland's really good at it too. So. Yeah.
You always need that one like quarterback of the show to like you said, keep it moving when the discussion turns off to, and so that awkward moment, and then you need that quarterback just to keep it carrying. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the first show. I'm looking forward to future episodes, and I do think it's pretty important to have a show like that right now for the genre. So You guys are doing great work. Don't forget, Scalp out right now, the big thing. The Slaughter Box nominated for the Splatterpunk Award. You should check that out too. Real quick, is there anything we can kind of expect from you coming out at least in the coming year or beyond?
Well, the maddening is definitely happening. That's Diablo Snuff 3, and as of right now, that's planned to be the final Diablo Snuff book. I'm not saying other books won't touch on it. I also have Faces of Beth coming up soon, kind of a play on the old Faces of Death.
I was going to say, I love that title.
Yeah, Faces of Beth is coming up. And, oh man, I just have so much stuff. Bone Bath Holler is another one I'm working on. I've just got all kinds of stuff going on. Way too much to
to know for sure. And all of it planned as self-published work.
Yes, as of right now, yeah. I'm not opposed to being with a publisher or anything like that. Like I said, I have been with one small publisher. But as of right now, that's the plan, all self-published.
I can't argue with you. Like I said, I'm self-published myself. And you know, it's like why bother? You got the software going on to do all the conversions and everything like that for you. And so why wait, right? You're doing well enough on your own.
That's a big part of it. It's like, if I'm going to be with a publisher, it really needs to be somebody who is going to help with the marketing and things like that. You know, I made the mistake of going with somebody once before who, it was just like being self-published, really. So it was like, what was the point? So
right. And now you got great outlets like Godless.com and everything to just help you along with that. You know, it's just a great platform for self-publishers as far as I can see. So you got a lot of great stuff going on in your corner. Best of luck to you in the Splatterpunk Awards. I think it's June or July. They probably July that they give out that award. So best of luck to you in that category. A lot of stiff competition. You're in great company there. And Carver Pike, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And when you come out with all those new books, don't hesitate to come back here on Bizzong.
Of course, man. Thank you so much. I've had a great time.
Carver Pike, Zongers. What a fun interview that was, getting to know Carver. You know, he's coming from this crop of writers. It's no big secret now that I've been talking to a lot of these extreme horror writers who are very much so tied into Godless.com, but they also have their work available in a lot of other places. But Carver's another one. He's got pen names. He's writing some erotica. A lot of these extreme horror guys that are making some noise right now seem to be coming out of this erotica place where they're just their soul is beaten down, and you know, it's sort of a soulless endeavor to write that stuff, I imagine, time after time. And it's, you know, it's this very extreme sort of different kind of horror that you know, makes you feel alive somehow. Zonger's writing that stuff, and they're always the best people in the world, it seems. You know, you hear it time and again. It's almost cliche, like the extreme horror writers tend to be like the nicest people in the world, and you know, it seems like that's a universal truth. I haven't come across the turd of an extreme horror writer just yet. I'm sure they're out there, but they are vastly few and far between. Make sure, though, you check out Carver Pike on that Written and Read podcast. I'm having fun listening to it. He does that with Daniel Volpe, Aaron Beauregard, and William Bursey Jr. himself. I've had 3 of the 4 now, so William Bursey Jr., I may be coming for you. There's a very good likelihood of that. But they have a really cool writing podcast that I'm enjoying so far. They're doing introductory episodes, one revolving around each of the hosts, and they'll be moving on to different topics and getting into like the meat of the matter of their podcast in the coming weeks. So check it all out. It is a great time. And don't forget to check out Scalp, available exclusively on Godless. I don't know that exclusively. I haven't done a lot of research on that, but I know it is totally available on Godless.com. And I encourage you, if you're going to buy some horror books and they're available on Godless.com, please buy them on Godless. The writers, the creators get bigger chunks of royalty than Amazon gives out. So that's the cool thing. And it's an awesome community that's being built there. It's not just a book retail place. We've been down this road before, Zongers. Get right with Godless. That's what I keep saying. And if you don't want to get right with Godless, Zongers, you can go to audible.com. don't forget my new audiobook, Brats in Hell, is available right now, freshly released, and it is narrated by my good friend and frequent guest on Bizzong, the one and only Mr. John Wayne Commonally, who was the perfect voice for Brats in Hell. Nobody else could have pulled it off as well as he did. I'm very proud of his effort on there. Zongers, between me and you, get at me. Email me, frankjedler@gmail.com. I've got free codes if you want to check out the book. All I ask in return is that you leave a review on Audible or wherever when you're done listening to it. It's just that simple. And my God, it is a great audiobook. If you're into listening to those, I'd be happy to give you a free code so you can check it out. But that's all I got time for you fine zongers this week. We'll be back next week, you know for sure, with another great guest that's writing weird and wacky fiction, and maybe a little bit of extreme horror too. And until then, you are free to go and listen to these other great Project Entertainment Network, the podcast.
What up, co-workers? It's Hard at Work, the show where we talk about nerds, so we talk about at work, to distract us from work, recorded at work. I'm Hard at Work, Matt.
I'm Hard at Work, Nick.
Our show comes on every Tuesday around 6 o'clock or so.
That sounds about right.
And what do we talk about?
We talk about the nerdy stuff, we're talking video games, movies, TV shows.
How much insider knowledge we got?
0.
None at all.
We don't know shit.
How good are our opinions?
Oh, they're real good.
They real good, though. Trust me. So tune in, give it a listen. You'll love it.
Are you so tired of having your own thoughts? Are you just totally exhausted having your own beliefs on every single thing in the entire world?
Well, don't worry. Here at Your New Opinion, we do the thinking for you.
Join Ryan,
Nick,
and Ben
as the boys debate topics that we probably know nothing about, using every dirty trick they can think of to win.
Everything from if net neutrality is good or bad, to cake versus pie, to who killed JFK.
So if you're looking to never have your own thoughts again, check out Your New Opinion every Friday.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.